Hello and welcome to the fourth session of third course. Today we will be talking about the lack of cognition, understanding, and understanding of goal and means. We're going to talk about the aspiration for elevation and the importance of the knower of the path. We're also going to understand these through an example of mountain climbing and its equipments. It's an analogy that Dr. Taheri uses. We're also going to talk about the law of order and disorder. And we will be talking about the crisis of order repulsion, or basically the repulsion that happened in a society as a result of overemphasis on order. And we will be talking about the philosophy of Ramadan and fasting. So before we start, as always, let's hear some reports, and if there are any questions we ought to answer. And we start the theoretical material. Anyone would like to share or any questions?
Hi, Priya. I'm
Hello.
not sure if it's just me or you're just not visible on the screen.
Is it solved?
No.
Oh,
I don't know if anybody else can
can
see it.
anyone else confirm that, please? Does anyone see me, or is it stock?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, so it's you.
Yeah, I can see.
All right. Thanks for the confirmation. All right. So, are there anything to share or any questions before we start? I know there are a lot of questions. Again, I don't know how much I should emphasize for people to not feel bad about asking questions or thinking their questions are too basic or repetitive or harsh or in any nature that stops them from asking the questions. So we designate a portion of the class for those questions, and experience also indicates that through those discussions, things can become more clearer. So please ask your questions. There are no bad or too simple or harsh questions. You can ask anything you like, and I will be answering them. Anyone would like to start? No questions. Yes, please.
Hi, Priya.
Hi.
This is Sohaila.
Yes, I know. Hi.
Yeah,
Nice to see you.
good. I just wanted to confess that the last few sessions, I fell asleep right in the middle of the session.
Okay.
So I woke up the next morning and the Zoom was still going. Of course, I was kicked out,
Right.
but no, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for letting me know. But one of the things that I actually mentioned before that is common for this course because of the halqeh that we received, that the scans are in a way that people feel sleepy or fall asleep. So it is absolutely normal, and you can always go back to the recording and catch up.
Is there any any halqeh given out right now? Because some people are feeling kind of weird.
No,
Like they have this.
if you're asking whether we gonna have a new halqeh, no. The third course only halqeh is mind silence or control of the mind. So that's the only halqeh that we received, and for the rest of the course, we don't have anything until fourth course.
No, I'm talking about the halqeh that are being released from the central like Dr. Taheri is releasing anything new?
Well, there's always something new that is being um, released in terms of new holidays, but he didn't announce it yet. But there are always things that are being worked on in terms of the collective spirit, in terms of other holidays that we received that it starts working as soon as we become an impartial observer or do a nazar. It is very common that we experience a lot once as we going forward, as we are becoming impartial observers. So it becomes part of the life, you know. So we can't really sometimes we could, sometimes we can, but it becomes really hard to distinguish what exactly or specifically is causing the particular process that you're having because there are so much going on at the same time. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter. What it matters is that we see the results and we recognize the parts that we need to work on, the improvements on our worldview filter and our approach to the way of operation, the way that you're acting out, the principles, and etc. So if that, I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah. You talked about worldview filters.
Yes.
Is there any specific halqa for that, or
No, there are no specific halqas that would change someone worldview automatically, but how it works is that each halqa would give an experience, and as a result of that experience, an understanding that would result someone's worldview shift. So there are no direct, let's say, halqa that you would establish it and suddenly your worldview is changed. The worldview changes by individuals' free will, recognition, understanding, understanding, innate level comprehension, experience. And that's the part that we need to basically partake throughout our process, our spiritual journey. That's our art of showing how much we are really determined to walk on the path of Kamal and make the shifts necessary for embodying those high quality values and that qualities that requires the spiritual maturities or results the spiritual maturity.
okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the question. Someone
Okay.
else opened the mic. I think it was anyone else had any question? I'm actually not sure who it was, but any other questions?
You have one in the chat.
I
saw
have one in the chat. Okay. All right. Thanks for
Yeah,
letting me
I
know.
didn't see it anymore.
Okay. Someone says, I was wondering for the downloads we receive, can they be shown to us in coincidences, signs, and synchronicities, or would that be the negative network? Well, good question. It depends. It really depends. It could be um, all sorts of ways, but I wouldn't use word coincidence because it would imply that it's, coincidence is basically implies that it doesn't have a specific order behind it or it's arbitrary and random, but everything is based on an order and a specific well-designed characteristic. So, but I know what you mean by that word, signs and synchronicities. It all depends the way in which that hikmat or uh, divine destiny occurs, which, if you remember, we talked about it, relates to the law of reflection. It operates in a way that it would fulfill the enthusiasm that we had throughout our life, and also the direction that we want to go, or the things that are we interested. So that it being fulfilled through some administrators or agents, and those agents would fulfill those necessities through different various veins, events, signs, and you could call it synchronicities. But you need to be very careful with that, because most of those are coming from negative network, and the signs are something that I would not really consider positive, because most of the common understanding of a sign is that someone sees like 11 o'clock, and suddenly, and they're thinking about something, or they're heading toward a place, and then seeing that, it kind of, they perceive that as a confirmation of they're in the right path, or they're thinking about the right thing, or they should make that decision because they saw this number, or they, let's say, think about something, and then suddenly someone talks about it. That's different. There are things that are really intricate when you want to really get to the details of the events in life. But generally speaking, I would say that um, if we go back to the law of reflection and then the law of cross, we know that, for example, there are filters that we can use and to confirm whether coming from negative or coming from positive. And the way in which that we can confirm it is that, does that give me a specific direction? Does that interfere with my free will? Is it something that kind of give me a direct direction, or tells me what to do? Or am I actually thinking and putting things together and make it aware decision with the awareness of the responsibilities, the consequences, so on. And if that's the case, then that's a conscious decision. So how much that so-called sign or coincidence, so-called, for the lack of a better word, is influencing our decision is the key. It should not influence our decision in such a way that violates natural laws that we discussed before. As you know, we discussed the necessities of running those awarenesses and epiphanies, revelations, you call them downloads, in such a way that it always goes through the filters that we learned, and it passes through all the factors. And even if it violates one, you know that it can't be from positive network. So it's a good question. It's very intricate. It comes from a lot of experience, but it's also simple, as long as it's not interfering with our free will in such a way that we are making that decisions with all the awareness and understanding of the consequences, and we are taking it. Even if it's wrong, it becomes our experience, but we didn't allow some other force or source or thing to manipulate us toward a decision. If we make a decision, we can make a wrong decision. But if we made a wrong decision and we become aware later on, we take the responsibility and see it as a mistake and grow, and learn from that mistake and grow. But if we kind of let our free will or decisions to be manipulated by some sort of external circumstances or events, then we will find ourselves at some point making a lot of decisions in our life that we would question as why we made those decisions. And we kind of like think about, oh, like we did it because this force or this synchronicity or this felt good or that, appeared very interesting. And then some people might not even realize it, but it becomes so deviating that they end up in all sorts of various places that it's not aligned with the purpose of creation and the purpose and goal that we are talking about in terms of the philosophy of creation, which is Kamal. So if you always like look into like always go back to Kamal, is this decision is gonna lead us toward Kamal, or does this experience help us with our Kamal journey? Or anything from that line. So that simplifies it quite a lot. When we just gauge it with Kamal, that's one of the toughest gauges. So if it passes through that, then we can run it by other things. But one of the more, if we have a good understanding of what Kamal is and what comes with it, then it should be very easy for us to kind of evaluate every thoughts or every awareness or every epiphany and just know. And sometimes there are things that are in between and it's hard to tell. We can shelve those ideas until like we have more confirmation or assurance and not rush to make a specific decisions that the consequences could be um, impacting, negatively impacting the Kamal journey. Great question. Thank you. Anyone else have any question? All right. No questions? Okay. So let's begin our discussion. The first discussion we're going to have is the lack of recognition, understanding, and understanding of goals and means. And this is one of the natural laws that it really helps us to navigate a lot of circumstances and know how we should change our worldview and have it align with the natural laws and have it align with Kamal journey. So all of us, we encounter this question in our life that what is goal and what is me? So what is our goal in the life and what are the means to serve that goal? And the significance of this question is so much that it can really impact individuals' overall quality of life, the way that they interact with a lot of events, and how the events and occurrences can impact them also based on that worldview. Because the way in which that we define things, like let's say we put it in a formulated, articulated thought, and then that becomes part of our belief and our worldview. And then, as we said, when we go through the circumstances, then we notice that we make these decisions based on that pre-programmed worldview filter, and then that leads to us in different places with each different decisions that we make. So if we choose mean as a goal, then the foundation of our life becomes very shaky and unstable because at any moment that can fall. And the reason of that is that every mean has an expiry date. Sooner or later, that expiry date will come. And then if someone put that mean as their goal, because the expiry date arrived, then they find themselves devastated and find their life meaningless because the foundation of their life, the goal of their life is evaporated. So one of the most important thing about this law is to understanding how this choice of an understanding of what is a goal and what does it mean could have great impact in individual's life in many aspects of it. So we can really look at the different goals that usually common people choose in life. And that could be all sorts of things from scientific services. Some people could serve their kids. Some people have the goal of their life as wealth, health, power, fame, religion, their children, their spouse, peace, uh, being fortunate, whatever that means for each individual, service to humanity, uh, liberty, freedom, being a servant for God, marriage, love, Erfan, and etc. So all these different um, aspects of life, all these different notions could be chosen as life goal. Now, if any of them is chosen for the life goal, because again have an expiry date, and after that time, suddenly everything that they worked for or they put energy toward is gone. Now, when we look into these notions deeper, we realize that there's only one goal that can not have an expiry date and can continue even after our death in this life. And all the other aspects that we mentioned could actually serve as a mean for that goal. We already talked about the idea that the only knowledge that we can take with ourselves next life is the knowledge of Kamal. And we established the understanding that the Kamal is the only knowledge that we can take it with us, and anything else that we learn about, any skills, any knowledge, everything other than Kamal would be left behind after the death. So all those knowledges, skills becomes absolutely redundant after we're dead. Then with this perspective, now looking at it from the decision of choosing the goals and means, we realize that if anything that we want to put our life goal is bound to end, then if we find something like Kamal that we can actually continue growing in it and then it never ends, then that's the most optimal and aligned goal to have. So the ultimate purpose and goal in life is nothing but Kamal. So anything that we mentioned, science, wealth, fame, peace, religion, power, spouse or marriage or children, service to humanity, freedom, even service to God, act of service, and Erfan even Ishq. All these are means to serve one ultimate goal, and that's Kamal. And that's something that is so powerful to incorporate in our worldview and approach in life that it really alters a lot in terms of what is necessary in our life to change toward alignment and synchronicity and hamfazi with the law of existence and natural laws and the philosophy of existence. So learning about science, even religion, each of them are different means. For example, science is following the goal of understanding the physical world and understanding deeper and deeper of how this works. Religion is a mean to serve the creations and their elevation. But that is also limited to each life. So here we call it religion because it's associated with the dynamic and the circumstances that we are living in it. But later on, the religion that we are having here, for example, the laws of religion, let's say eat this or don't eat that, or do this or don't do that, these things are not in place next life. So because we don't have a body to eat to begin with, or when we don't have a body, then there are a lot of the things that comes with this limitations, that so many suggestions that the religion has to guide us toward, let's say, alignment. It's basically redundant because it's not an issue anymore. So it's important to understand all of that. Even Erfan is a mean to help us in the journey that we are here to get to that highest level that we can achieve and have that as a package of knowledge of Kamal, move to the next life, and then the sets and things that we need to navigate is completely different when we die. So one of the biggest worldview issues that can cause illnesses and disorders actually is related to what we're discussing, which is the goals and means. Understanding each is significantly important, and its impacts on our life is also significant. It just acts like a pillar of the foundation of our life, and if we set that in an incorrect way, then becomes a very shaky foundation and it can fall anytime. The circumstances of life is always unexpected. So there are a lot of things that can happen that can shake the foundation if the means, such as wealth, power, children, spouse, and anything earthly, would be set as a goal, because there are so many circumstances that can take them away, and the expiry date of that is not really evident. And when it comes, then it can cause the foundation to crumble if they're set as the pillars, as the goals of the life. But again, if the goal is set as Kamal, not only it doesn't have an expiry date, but also it's something that it's constant, it's ever growing, and also it never turns to void. So human being really attracted to achievement, accomplishment, and getting to the heights of their goals, because that is kind of part of our intrinsic software, that it gives us this inclination toward growth, toward elevation, and it's Kamal seeking attributes that we have. It's coming from that. And most of us, we are aware of the um, notion that we are kind of enjoying that ascension, that elevation, that success, that achievement. Everyone really enjoys that heights, achieving the heights of our goals. And different people really see those achievements and heights in a different way. Someone literally see it as a summit of the mountain. Someone see it as flying. Someone sees it as increasing their wealth. Someone sees it as increasing their skills. And those achievements are basically these heights that they're aiming. And then when they achieve it, they feel great. And this internal feeling, the subconscious joy of achievement, is ingrained in our intrinsic software. And that gives us motivation toward Kamal, toward moving forward, and ultimately toward Kamal. So if the movement toward Kamal would be kind of, if you could use an analogy of like hiking and getting to the summit of the mountain, for the motion toward Kamal and achieving Kamal, technically we can't achieve Kamal because it's infinite, but for the lack of a better word and the limitations of language, we can understand it in a better way, kind of looking at this analogy, the analogy of kind of hiking is very interesting because it has very intricate details, and Dr. Char uses it all the time to demonstrate the intricacy and the details that it really resembles that journey of Kamal as well. So think about a professional hiker. If they're professional, then the type of equipments that they have, their gears are very different than someone unprofessional. And you can see that they would not really be how would I put that? A professional hiker would never be shy on spending money and resources on getting the best equipments possible and for their journey. So a lot of the things becomes very important. So they would not really feel that they need to kind of be more conservative on, let's say, spending money on the equipment, something like that. But we can think about that as an unprofessional hiker would be really concerned about like spending too much on, let's say, the equipments. Maybe it's not, maybe they don't care much about the functionality and quality, but rather just maybe their brand or like their just how pretty they are or how good looking they are. And they might actually carry a lot of unnecessary equipments with themselves because they don't know what is necessary in that journey because they've never been. So in the journey of Kamal, also, we could look at the necessities, the equipments that are necessary for the journey, and what are the features of these equipments that we could really consider. And if we don't have the appropriate equipments for the journey, then it can come with a lot of negative consequences. Another aspects of the professional hiker is that after they got their equipments, they're not really concerned about the equipments themselves, kind of like being distracted by how should keep them clean or like not scratch their brand new shoes or like kind of make them dirty or being concerned about like the appearance of it. They're just gonna hit the road and just focus on the summit of the mountain. And they know that these shoes are meant to serve the hiking, not just to remain pretty or clean. So the hiker would get the best shoes, the most lightest shoes, the most practical shoes for hitting the summit of the mountain. And after they are in their journey, they don't really care how much money they spent on their shoes and what they have on, because that's just serving a purpose for the journey itself. But the amateur hiker might actually be kind of like concerned about because they spend too much money or some money on the shoes. They would be like, oh, they're getting scratched, and just kind of like keep checking on it or try to keep it in a certain way. And their attention is not focused on the summit of the mountain or the journey itself. In the journey of Kamal, also, the eyes of the individuals that are Kamal seeking is always on the summit of the mountain, not on the equipments that they have, or not on the things that they see on the journey, even though that they might enjoy the journey itself, but they don't get distracted so much that they would alter their path. So another point is that the professional hiker would never go on a hike alone. One of the biggest and most important principles is that no one goes hiking alone, because if anything happens, as everyone knows, there are a lot of dangers on the path. So if anything happens, someone else can actually call help or help the individuals to get on their feet or survive. So in the journey toward the summit of the uh, Kamal Mountain, we also should not travel alone, because we need companies to, in case if we slip, and fall, then they can help us to get on our feet and help us to get back on the road again. So it is very important to kind of keep in mind these points as we go forward. I'll elaborate more how adds up to the actual Kamal journey. Also, if someone would just think about their own achievement or hitting the summit of the mountain, they're always gonna be kind of looking like selfish, kind of being just obsessed about themselves or think about themselves. And that is not attribute that is positive, perceived positive by anyone. So imagine you're going with a professional hiker and you need to wait a little bit, but uh, he would just keep going and not wait for you, or you fail and then he doesn't care and he just keeps going. And that kind of like resembles their selfishness because they're thinking just to get to the summit of the mountain on their own as fast as they can. So uh, the summit of the mountain representing Kamal, wanting the Kamal only for ourselves also shows narcissism or selfishness, and it's anti-Kamal. So when someone is on that journey, it always thinks about helping others to get to the summit of the mountain as well. Also, let's say if there's a fire in a place and someone just saves themselves and don't think about others, that's another form of selfishness. So in the Erfan, we see salvation as a collective matter, not an individual matter. And for that, the spiritual seeker and the person that is on the journey of Kamal always thinks about helping others on the journey as well. Another point is that the professional hiker would use the most lightest the lightest equipments for the journey, because they know that if they have heavy equipments, then it's harder to get to the summit of the mountain. But the amateur hiker, not knowing the journey and not having not setting the summit of the mountain as their goal, they might actually bring in a lot of equipments that are not essential and also make it harder for them to achieve that summit. We can even look at some individuals at the bottom of the mountain and immediately know that if they're a professional hiker or not by the equipments that they're carrying. Let's say if someone's like carrying like a big speaker or two watermelons in their arms, then you would definitely know that this person is not aiming the summit of the mountain. So the type of equipments and the type of gear, it indicates if someone has appropriate equipments for that aim. And then if someone looks at someone and see that they're carrying a speaker and two watermelon, they're almost sure that the first uh, route down to the river, those people would just basically go there and just have fun. Um, with the that is not so the summit is not their goal, is something else. So the eyes of the professional hiker is always set on the summit of the mountain, and he is well aware of the necessities and importance of the appropriate equipment that is necessary for the journey, and avoiding anything heavy for the journey. So same when we kind of apply this analogy to Kamal, if someone is in the journey of Kamal and the Kamal in our Erfan, we know that the only thing that we need is Nazar, and there's no necessity for any techniques, any equipments, anything wearable, no necklaces, bracelets, or nothing that we could basically we would need. So we know that the most simplest equipments that we need for Kamal journey is Nazar. and that's it. And if we see that other, let's say, hikers of Kamal, or supposing hikers of a Kamal journey, they're bringing heavy equipments, then we know that that's not appropriate, and that's not gonna make it not only easier, but also it can stop them from actually being able to hit the summit of the mountain. So Kamal is not, Kamal doesn't come with something variable, with a special crystal or a special necklace or a special bracelet or a special equipment. None of that is relevant to the Kamal. And in a true Erfanic path, we know that everything that we need, and it should be the most simplest thing. It shouldn't be complicated. So Kamal journey, as we established the understanding before, is going from neediness to needlessness, going from complexity to simplicity. So the more we go further, the more simple it becomes. And Erfan is an internal transformation and doesn't have any external manifestations to show other people. Like if someone achieves like a high qualities of Erfan, they can come and show it off to people, like call everyone like, hey everyone, look um, how much I'm hamfaz with universe, how much I'm in peace, how much I'm in unity with existence. That's not something that we could see or we could show off with, and it's achieved through only a nazar to establish these connections with God. So a professional hiker, based on their financial abilities, would not would able to, but would spend as much as they can to assure that they get the best equipment for their journey. Those equipments should be the lightest, the most high quality, and they wouldn't shying or trying to be stingy over that, because it's very important, because it's basically serving the purpose of achieving the summit of the mountain, the Kamal. So in the journey toward Kamal is also very important to choose the best and the most simplest and lightest equipments, and not getting lost in a complicated words or notions or um, things that would, or practices or ceremonies or rituals that would complicate things that people need to, let's say, travel thousands of kilometers, or um, you know, um, carve something in a very specific way to get to this specific piece of jewelry, so that they can wear it, so that brings them some sort of a hypothetical spiritual state or status. So all those things are not necessary, and not only makes it easier, but actually makes it harder, and it complicates the path. It makes it heavier to walk on the journey to aim for the summit of Kamal. And as we know, there are a lot of schools of thoughts that are called Erfanic or spiritual, that would kind of use a very complicated um, vocabularies, spiritual vocabularies, and or ideas, or um, make certain practices that are really complicated, or requires a lot of different tools or means to achieve some sort of spiritual state. But we know that here we have it all very, very simple, with the simplest mechanism, that it actually becomes very complicated. It's so simple that it becomes complicated because our logic doesn't believe that it could be so simple, of just doing a nazar, a glimpse, 0 second, the T-consciousness field is initiated, established, and it starts working, and we just need to sit back and observe. And the other part of that we established before, that when we do that, then there are some shifts and awarenesses and epiphanies that are demonstrated through epiphanies and revelations that we should partake on with our own free will to show that we are determined and we do want it by our free will to be on that journey and achieve those specific attributes. So one of the important indication in any journey of Kamal or any equipments considered for the journey of Kamal should be the lightest, the simplest, and least complicated, so that it's appropriate for the journey. Now, one other note is that there are stations in any long hike. There are stations that people rest, and they kind of take the moment to get ready for the next station. And this stations might even make the journey a little bit longer, but they're established in places that are more beautiful, easier to stay, the weather is better, so that it's safe to stay and then kind of take a breather from that journey that already individuals went through. But the important point is that the hikers that are professional, they wouldn't get so attracted to those stations that they would kind of like forget about the summit of the mountain and just stay there. And that suddenly becomes their final destination. So it is essential that after take a breather, then they would leave that station and then they get back to their journey again. So it is very important that even though that we should enjoy the journey, the beauty of the journey, and everything that comes as a beautiful experience in the journey, we should not get hung up by it and distracted so much that would deviate us from the main path and main journey as we are going through. So that comes back to the importance of understanding the goals and means, because if we set them in an incorrect way, then that would result individuals get distracted in such way that their camel journey would be disturbed, and then that individuals might be their camel journey might be interrupted. Any questions before we go to the next topic? No questions? Okay. The next topic we're going to talk about is the law of order and disorder. This is also one of the natural laws that are very important. The lack of cognition, understanding, and understanding of this law can also cause a lot of different illnesses and disorders that can interfere with the individual's health and other people's quality of life. So it is important for us to understand and look at it, recognize the details of it. So majority of individuals, when they encounter a form of disorder, at least on an apparent level, for example, if someone have kind of let's say if they go to a room and then their picture frames are slightly tilted, or the place is chaotic, then majority of people get disturbed and their mental and psychological state gets negatively impacted by that. And even sometimes it's to the point that the individuals actually aim to put the order back to the place so they can feel better. For example, if it's a crowded place, or if there's a disorganized place, they try to put things back to order so they can sit and then you can feel better. Or if there's that tilted frame in the doctor's waiting room, if they could, they put like a ladder and then just fix it. And the whole time they're thinking about why there's like 3-degree tilt to the left and not dead straight. So they get really bothered by that. So the apparent order is something that it can bother a lot of people, and the questions that we can we encounter is that is it important to maintain the health or apparent order? Another question is that is a life with order better or disorder? Now, it's a controversial way of putting it as a questions because a lot of people might jump into the conclusions that we are saying that the order is not good. That's not what we're kind of going for. But hear me on that and let me kind of take you to a vein of thought and see how we look at it. So, order is a mental construct that each individual would make it in a specific way as a result of environmental circumstances. And then they look into the surrounding, and then everything that is out there would be kind of assessed and analyzed with that framework and would be tagged as orderly or not. For example, imagine a town that everyone in the town, they have their buttons done, their shirts buttons done in an awkward way, in a disorderly way. And if someone walks into this town, then their mental construct is that this is disorder, and this is something wrong with this town. And now, when we want to look at it in a more broad way, applying that kind of view on the nature or existence, we can ask the questions that when we look at existence, do we see order or do we see disorder? For example, when we look at the sky and we see the stars are organized in a specific way. Do we see order or do we see disorder? Or when we go to the rainforest, do we see order or do we see disorder? Well, what we see is that it's disorder because, the branches fall in random places, the leaves are all over the place, the stars are kind of spread all over the place very randomly, and there's no kind of order. And if the humans could, they would put it in a very, very highly ordered way. Like as you can see, the human-made rainforest, trees are in the line, and if we could put it together, we put it in a specific order. And that's kind of like the symmetry and things that like we like to put together and then we make is symmetrical. And but what we see in nature is asymmetric. There's a lot of there's no same snowflake or hydrogen atom, or even the half of our face is not exactly symmetrical with the other half, and they're different. So what we see in nature in existence is it could perceived as disorder, and but it's contrary to how we feel. Like we know that when we go to rainforest or nature, we feel like in peace, and we feel really much more actually in peace when we are in a natural rainforest versus an artificial forest, or something that is designed by humans based on that mental framework. And why is that? It's a very interesting phenomena that we experience that. We experience that when we go to a place that everything has a very, very specific place and everything is absolutely clean and kind of orderly, let's say in a modern kind of building set up, then we feel in a specific way, but then we go to village in a kind of a village-like house, and that kind of the walls are made of mud, but we feel good, we feel great, more in peace. And this has something to do with that apparent order and disorder. So when we look at the existence as we established, it has an apparent disorder. And why we say, in a moment you realize why I'm using the word apparent order and apparent disorder, as opposed to another word that I'm getting into. So we see that the way that the stars are in the sky, the cosmos, the planets, the trees, a lot of things have, it appears as disorder. But even though that it appears in disorder, but it follows a specific order and systems that it makes it all working together. For example, the speed and the angle that things move, and the way in which that the trees grow, the roots, the way that it branches and roots are growing. So all that, it doesn't really follow a specific pattern that we can anticipate. It is a rough, kind of disorderly way of growing that it appears as disorder. So on the surface, apparent level, it's disorder, but in an intrinsic level or inner level or in its depth, there is order. So when we look at the nature, we see on an apparent level disorder, and on an innate level or an inner level, deeper level, an order. But the behavior of human beings are completely the opposite with what we see in nature. Humans developed a life that has order on the apparent level. For example, everything has to have its own place. Everything needs to be like, straight. The color palettes should match. They should follow a set. But then in the innate level, it's completely disorder. For example, a lot of the times we might have difficulty to find specific items, and it kind of goes with what we see as the print level, and on a very orderly and very specific framework, but then on an innate level, things are not feeling as calm and peaceful. For example, if the order is disturbed a little bit, then the individual's psychological and mental states is impacted negatively. What we see in the nature, we see that a lot of the frameworks that we have, like in terms of color palettes, are all broken. We see all the colors in natures and like arbitrary places. You see all the flowers right beside each other with no apparent color set. But even though that we see those colors in nature, but we would not be comfortable with basically doing the same thing with our clothing. Let's say that random colors to wear. We don't do that. And we kind of put things in a very specific color sets and color palettes. So this type of framework is coming from a type of worldview that disintegrates the unity of existence in such a way that it looks at this color is separated, that color, this specific item is separated from the other item. This, for example, frame or a form it doesn't go with this frame or work or form. So these type of disintegration of the existence is one of the examples of shirk, which is a blasphemy. And that is when some individuals would disintegrate of the unity of the existence. And this is very specific definition of shirk, actually, by Dr. Taheri. He decoded it as such. Before that, it was a very vague religious in terms of like very specific to any religious definition. But here in Erfan Halgheh, the definition of blasphemy is broader and inclusive in any religion or any beliefs, and it actually is about human beings, that anyone that disintegrates the unity of existence and doesn't see everything together, then that's one of the examples of representation of shirk. So the experience of human being when it comes to life, you see that it really differs in terms of quality when we are in a place that is closer to nature. It's more simpler, it's less of an apparent order, it feels better. But when we are in a place that is has a lot of apparent order, then the smallest little thing comes to attention. Now, when we're in a village type place, if there is a dent in the wall, or if there's something's broken, or if something's has scratches, or if something is not following the color palette, it doesn't really bother us, and actually we feel better, and we're not really confined by all these specific order of things, and we feel much more peace and lighter. But when we go to a minimalistic, not maybe minimalistic, but more like a modern cut and dry type of structures, that everything's like in line and follow a specific pattern on an apparent order, then things becomes actually more stressful. People are like concerned about disturbing the order in any way just by sitting on a couch. Just leave the line on the couch, let's say, or walking on a carpet and then having the step marks on it, or drinking a cup of water and then leave the water marks on a glass. Or there's so many things, or like one tiny scratch on the floor or on a piece of glass just show itself immediately. So that becomes like this resistance to the disorder on a very, very deep and detailed level. So one of the most common forms of humans' opposition is opposition toward natural laws, and as we are learning here, there are many natural laws. One of them is that our existence is made of order and disorder, and these have a very specific balance, and they are beside each other. The absolute order and absolute disorder doesn't have any definition. So one of the reasons that human beings developing a lot of illnesses, disorders, tensions, and issues is because of this absolute viewing or perception that is based on the worldview, that is based on wanting to see everything in an absolute level, absolute order. So this causes a lot of tension, and that compromises individuals' health. And we go back to the questions we asked earlier, that do we live for order, or is order for our life? Should order serve our life, or are we serving, or our life serves the order? So the definite answer should be that the order serves life, because otherwise it would imply that we are willing to compromise our health and life for order. And so we know that order, or establishing order, is not the ultimate goal of life. And living in peace in life and having more comfort is not necessarily coming from establishing an absolute or closest to the absolute order in life. So we put effort to have things in order in life to the point that it doesn't interfere with our health, with our mental and psychological sanity, or cause any sorts of tension in any level. So we recognize that the order is necessary aspects of life, and we need to have it for many things to work. But we also recognize that our health and quality of life could be compromised significantly if we are aiming to establish absolute order, which is impossible. So just a simple example that a lot of people would be um, really hating, let's say, washing dishes because it just resembles that order and continuous order and disorder. We put things back to order, we eat something, and then everything back to disorder. And that's gonna basically be a nature of life, and that's gonna happen again and again. And if we establish a worldview, an operation that every time that we encounter disorder, we get agitated, then there are so many circumstances in life that it causes agitation and causing disorders as a result of generation of negative potential energy. Someone asks, why do you think human beings have a need for order, perhaps a psychological need for control? Well, I wouldn't go that far because that's complicated, and it's kind of that's oversimplification of control. That's something separate. But why do we need order? Well, in order for things to work, you need planning, and things needs to be in a specific order. Order and disorder are both important and needed, and they work together. But if we go against one for the favor of the other, that things becomes like off balance and then cause issues. So too much order, it's bad. Too much disorder is bad. So we need to just utilize and use both of the aspects in alignment, so we can actually get the best out of it and avoid any potential negative impacts and negative consequences. I hope that answered your question. If not, you can have a follow-up question again and I will address it. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the repulsion to order as a result of the overemphasis of the societies toward order. And again, because order and disorder software is within us, intrinsically we have it, and both softwares are present. If we go toward one only, that implies suppressing the other, and that would result tension and negative consequences. We see some social phenomena that might not have any logical reasons when we encounter them. For example, someone just scratching the mirror, just kind of going to a bathroom where everything is nice and clean, and you see someone grab a marker and then wrote a lot of random things in the wall, or the graffitis that you see, let's say in most random places. You see the bus seats are scratched up, or kind of any type of vandalism that we see in society. Uh, all those, or like you can call it like antisocial behaviors, all those are signs of the repulsion of order. And these are the individuals that are enjoying disturbing the order or anything that resembles the order. And that is very important if you look at it psychologically and sociologically. The way in which manifests itself, it's subconscious. Like individuals don't know why they enjoy like scratching the mirror of the elevator or a bathroom, or kind of like doing those things that are disturbing or destroying the apparent order. Subconsciously, they have a joy, and that's why they do it. But if you ask them, they might not actually have the explanation really for it, but they just enjoy it. And this joy comes from that subconscious buildup of uh, individuals that either in the society or their family were pressured so much to be orderly. And we see a lot of sociological behaviors that we see from individuals that are could be considered abnormal or antisocial, or the behaviors that, as a result of the overemphasis on the orderly behavior or orderly operation. We also see some strange phenomena that there are some children that um, come from a very wealthy families, very families with the high educations and all, and then they continuously steal something small from convenience stores, and uh, that is antisocial behavior, and the reason is again linked to, in the eyes of Erfan Halgheh, linked to these pressure and tension, their childhood, that they want to be, their parents wanted to discipline them very orderly, so that kind of causes a repulsion to order and developing all sorts of antisocial behaviors. So the world of a child is based on the existence framework, which basically is based on order and disorder, both. So when we are pushing a child to only operate on an order level, for example, if they're playing with their toy, and then you can really observe that the child really cries to get the toy that they want, and then after they insisting and getting the toy they want, then they play a little bit with it and then they destroy it. So this basically is that innate software that it kind of manifests itself. So it wants to express itself, the order and the disorder. So, and then the parent, of course, many they would push their child or like punish their child for showing such behavior. And that overemphasis on orderliness caused tension and opposition within the child and the software against the order and against the disorder. And that would resembles itself later on when they're adult in a form or any form that would resembles order in society, uh, going against that make them feel better. So the actual world and the mind of a child is aligned with the construction and deconstruction based on the order and disorder. But again, parents wants to control the disorder and destruction aspects of it so much that would go against that existential software of the child, and they try to just educate them or train them only on an order level. And this basically come from the fact that the worldview of the parents and educators or trainers are based on not based on the law of order and disorder, and they just basically think that it's basically set on the order only and logic. So order and logic is what we are sociologically training all the children only, and that causes a lot of problems later on in their life. We see a lot of different behaviors or a lot of different resistances that doesn't allow the child to have fluorescence and show all their potential that they have. So we see that any of those issues coming from this framework of that comes from the worldview of the parents only be on the orderly and the logical level, and then after they push their children so much to train them that way, then they just feel proud that they basically destroyed one aspect of their child, so now they're completely orderly and logical. And those children grow up, and then anything outside of the logic or that framework would be censored, and they have more difficulty experiencing things from the world of ishq and the quality world, because that does not operate on the world of logic and is quite contrary. So all the efforts of education system, many parents, which is based on this orderly overemphasis and over focused on the orderliness and logic based, that is enforced on children, it causes a lot of issues. It neutralizes a very important existential software that is necessary for efflorescence later on, especially in spirituality. And as soon as the control of the parents is reduced, and they're when they're like when they're closer to become an adult, even in a teenagehood, you see that the rebellion begins, and this opposition becomes apparent, comes to the surface, and the this conflict between these two different softwares within the individuals overflows, and then we see that the individuals would rebel against any logic and anything resembling order and logic. That it is a rebellion that is subconscious, and anywhere that they can disturb any type of form of order and logical procedure, they subconsciously feel joy. And again, if you really get deep into how many things in society resembles order, many things in society, the social constructs, they're all based on order. And the overemphasis causes this abnormal behaviors. And these behaviors can cause all sorts of psychological and mental illnesses and disorders, and also can develop, at least it can just cause a lot of antisocial behavior and destructive behavior. So it is very important to understand that the enforcement of logical operation and order-based operation to children, it negatively impacts their subconscious. It exposes them to the phenomena of order repulsion and logic repulsion in their intrinsic software, and in their not intrinsic software, in their subconscious. So then later on in society, it would have more of antisocial and abnormal behaviors. And we can see that we can see that there are a statistically higher number of those issues in a more modern societies, or the societies that are governed more logic based or more orderly based. And that resembles itself in society much more. And we can see that the rebellion of teenagers and young adults against those type of operation. In West, the technology and the higher orderliness of the operation, we can see that suddenly a child grabs a rifle and with automatic rifle and shoots down a lot of students for no apparent reason, and a lot of different ways that individuals might appear suddenly completely insane or captivated and doing things that it doesn't really make any sense. And we see that how that kind of represents itself. There are a lot of different uh, ways in which that individuals would uh, go against that order. You can be creative thinking about it, like anything that resembles order. If anything in society, any dynamic, any way that we are operating in terms of it could be identity, it could be the groups that we might kind of feel attracted to in the teenagehood. If anything that goes against the order in place in society, disturbing it, it feels better and feels right. and that causes a lot of reactions in societies, so that becomes a kind of protest against order and logic. But that doesn't mean that those behaviors are good. It's basically an abnormal behavior as a result of an abnormal operation that early on was implemented and enforced in their subconscious by a faulty worldview and perception. So we can really look into different aspects of life, and then the different manifestations in societies, and kind of be creative of how many different ways in which that these type of rebellion and protest against order and logic could take place. Okay, we have a question. Are we talking about a compulsive behavior when we talk about order or disorder? People living in villages closer to nature are okay with disorder. Why can't people in cities? Okay, I'm not sure if I understand your question, but I try, and you let me know if I understood it or answer it correctly. So compulsive behavior has a very specific definition. We're not talking about compulsive behavior when we talk about order or disorder. We are talking about order and disorder as an aspects of existence, intrinsically existence in the natural laws. And then as a result, we need to just be in peace with those two notions, and knowing that those are um, two aspects of existence and both essential and give definition to each other. And one can't exist without the existence of the other. And those are the part of the natural laws and part of existence. So now, when we go against one, then part of our inner existence would rebel, and also it causes tension. Now, that can resemble or manifest itself in different ways. And that's why we were talking about, for example, things that are very orderly or things that are in a very specific way. It causes a lot of tension, because when the order is disturbed, then we feel tension. The reason that people in, let's say, villages are okay with disorder, because they don't see, they don't see the order around themselves. So what happens is that, um, let's say, if the walls of their place is not all straight and cut in a very specific way, then and then it's all mud, so they don't see the order in the wall, and that's why they don't notice the smallest thing in the surrounding on the wall. But if the wall is completely flat, the slightest little dent, it's much more noticeable. So that's why we say, like, people in the village have more, it feels better, like in the village house, because there's less of an order, so it's kind of like balanced. There's some order, for example, there are walls, or there's some geometry in there, but it's not super orderly, because there's some discrepancy, like there might be a crack in the wall, or there might be a little bit tilt in the door, and then the a lot of details that are not like perfectly cut square. That's what we mean. Or like when because they're closer to nature, they always see different colors altogether. So they might not develop this specific taste of color palettes. And that's why, like, people in the villages, they wear like clothing with all sorts of random colors that people in the city don't. And the let's say the fashion industry focuses on kind of like extracting this a specific color, developing a specific color palette, and then call that beautiful, and then call the other one not beautiful. And then these things change through history and through eras, and things like that as well. So people in cities, they often see this everything orderly around themselves, and things becomes more noticeable. Imagine if you're in a place that all the tiles are shiny and all white. The smallest little hair or dust on the floor, you notice it. Whereas in a village where there's like carpets full of different colors, and then there's some dusts everywhere a little bit, and the wood has its grain and cracks and imperfections. They're all part of the design of the, not even maybe not be intentional to call it a design, but it's part of the uh, organic part of the structure, or organic part of the scene. And all these imperfections kind of together make things representing the order and disorder together. Whereas in the cities, we aim to reduce the disorder as much as we can, and as fast as we can. And that's why, like, this smallest, again, dust in the floor, or like the smallest dot in the dent in the appliances, or the tiniest of scratches on the vehicles, uh, all sorts of things that are kind of like might be affecting individuals. So the aim here in Erfan Halgheh is to, first of all, become aware of the natural laws, become familiar with the different aspects of it, and also know that it is important to be hamfaz and harmonize one with, synchronize in peace with natural laws. Therefore, if there are adjustments in our worldview needed, then we should kind of aim toward that. And also, we would have halghehs to help us with that process. So, for example, when we do cosmic hamfazi, we can actually want to have experiences and understanding this natural law, this specific law of existence of order and disorder, and we can develop a peace. And part of the, if you remember, we talked about the spiritual consequences of the cosmic hamfazi is peace. So, and one of it was peace with natural law, and then this is one of the natural laws, the order and disorder law. And developing the peace with that, it makes us resistance to any negative potential energy generation as a result of encountering any phenomena that resembles disorder. Let's say if there is a crowded space, sure, it's not optimal, it's better to be orderly, but if it's crowded, then it doesn't, or disorganized, it doesn't bother us. It doesn't put so much tension and pressure for us that we develop headache or stress or anxiety or agitation. So that's the aim. I hope that answered your question. If anyone have any other question, or if you have a follow-up question, let me know. Okay. Let's do 15 minutes at the cell, and we come back and discuss the last point that we have in the theoretical material tonight. And we do another at the cell, and then that's it for tonight. So let's do 15 minutes at the cell. We will be back. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone would like to share, or any questions before we start? Anyone? Does everyone have my voice?
Yes,
Okay.
it was.
Anyone would like to share? Any experience or anything you would have a question about? Okay. All right. Let's discuss the last part of the session. And this is about Ramadan and the philosophy of that. So one of the sacred times considered in Islam dedicated to self-awareness and self-purification. And it's related to the suggestions and the prescriptions that they have for the act of fasting, which basically enables the individuals to attain the divine blessing, and it's considered the holy month of Ramadan. So fasting has a long-standing history among devout individuals, and since ancient times, Old Testaments, and some of its benefits we will discuss here. However, the key point is that the significance of this month, this spiritual reward, the blessing of this specific month lies not merely in refraining from eating and drinking, but in realizing the essence of Ramadan. And that's what we're going to discuss. What is that? So, Ramadan, first and foremost, refers to a unique state, not just a specific time. In Arabic literature, Ramadan denotes the intense radiance of the sun's light. And the reason for the naming of this month is it could be the peak of the sunlight and heat, and one may interpret Ramadan as the intense radiance of divine blessing. So it could be like metaphorical, uh, referring to that. So the highest outcome of divine blessing is enlightenment and the awareness, the innate level comprehension, and that understanding that includes the awareness of the presence of God. And perceiving God's presence has various levels. And in the history of Islam, the first person to achieve the pinnacle of this Ramadan was the Prophet Muhammad. So through a inner revelation and that um, annihilation of the self, that spiritual annihilation, he attained a level of knowledge that resulted in a complete revelation of Quran, as many might know. And the Ramadan of the Prophet, which occurred in the month of Ramadan, granted a special um, special spiritual reputation and left a lesson for other seekers. Anyone can experience their own Ramadan in this month, so it's not exclusive. And just as the Prophet's Ramadan, which led to such achievements, others also can achieve such a profound and transformative insight and revelations and awareness in their lives and during this time. So the time of Ramadan serves as a reminder and an opportunity to attain the unique divine blessing. So in general, those who bring about this spiritual transformation or the journey of Erfan can be categorized in several groups. We already talked about this before, but it's relevant, so I'm going to mention it here. The first person is self-centered, self-aligned. These are the individuals who pursue personal goals and rely solely on their own efforts to achieve them. And then we have the self-centered, God-reliant individuals. These individuals also pursue personal goals, but seeks God's help to achieve their objectives. And we have God-centered, self-reliant, the groups that the goal is still closeness to God, but they rely on their own effort rather than seeking God's assistance to reach their goal. And then we have God-centered, God-reliant, which is the approach in Erfan Halgheh, and these definitions are unique to Erfan Halgheh. And RD individuals have both the goal of the attaining closeness to God, as well as rely entirely on him as the means to achieve the goal. Now, the fourth group attain the level of self spiritual annihilation, where their perspective becomes God's perspective, and their words becomes God's word, and so on. So they separate themselves from human attributes and distance themselves from the limitations as much as they can through those understandings, revelations, and epiphanies that comes and transforms individuals from within. So all prophets who were given scriptures achieved these states and were granted the divine revelation. And others may also, in their way, attain the awareness and the character of the God-centered, God-reliant. But specifically, the month of Ramadan facilitates the extraordinary um, opportunity and elevates the understanding, which is why it is considered blessed. So, understanding and knowledge, the innate level comprehension, understanding leads to faith. So, the understanding, awareness, epiphanies, that inner transformation leads to faith. For this reason, um, and in the light of the Quranic recommendation, which basically there's a verse saying that, oh, you who have believed, believe again. And what that means is that there are some believers that they think that they are a believer, but they're not. And it can be said that Ramadan can enhance the heartfelt faith of those who benefit from it. So attaining this second level of faith equates to receiving divine forgiveness, and while failing to achieve the results in being deprived of forgiveness. So if you remember, we talked about the night of Qadr, Laylatul Qadr. It also is one of the nights in Ramadan. I mentioned it before, but now we're kind of delving deeper into Ramadan itself, the philosophy of it, what it was, because a lot of people really associate it only with refraining from eating and drinking, but there are a lot of deeper aspects of it, and there's a lot of symbolic significance and that is missed throughout the history. And Dr. Taheri really decoded them and then put the new definitions and the depth that it represents and how we can really approach it and look at it differently and have that transformation to transform us toward innate level transformation that is necessary in the Camel journey. So one of the important aspects that it kind of goes back to what we were discussing about the hiker keeping their direct gaze on the summit of the mountain. As someone, a seeker, Erfanic individuals that is journeying in the Kamal journey, has a direct gaze toward God, which does not deviate in any direction, and is the greatest shield against the infiltration of devils and um, the negative aspects of consciousness. We talked about it. So, closing that quality would close the way to the influence of negative intelligence network. And alternatively, it could be referred to as an alignment with God. So there's a verse called Fastaqimu ilayh, which basically is talking about remain steadfast toward Him, completely focused on Him and taking the most direct, simplest, shortest path to God. And that cuts off the hands of Satan. So this alignment not only increase the spiritual orientation, but also creates mutual influence that it's very, very important on a sociological level, an individual level. And in this sense, when a significant portion of community align themselves with God, as prescribed by the collections of divine laws, and that is part of their spiritual journey, and also as the collective spirit, others will also find greater potential for spiritual growth within this context. So it can be considered that just as the auction season is the best time for purchasing and acquiring items. Let's say it's, you know, the season that you purchase things like Black Friday, Boxing Day, things like that is the best time to buy something. The month of Ramadan also provide a unique opportunity for self-improvement, and in a sense that there are a lot of aspects of it, the collective aspects of it, and this collective aim toward spiritual transformation and sacrifices that breaks through the repetitive habitual patterns that would stop and disturb individuals from the journey of Kamal. It really makes this significant moment in time for individuals to have that journey. So this contrasts with other months that lack the same unified focus on goodness, virtue, and pursuit of divine justice. The state is based on وَإِيَّا مَعَ الْجَمَاعَةِ وَإِيَّاكَ مَعَ الْجَمَاعَةِ, which basically talks about the significance of the collective effort, which expands the divine blessing and creates widespread grace. So from this perspective, Ramadan is one of the exceptional divine blessing for those divine blessing opportunities for those who strive for perfection, for Kamal. But those who fail to take advantage of this extraordinary opportunity will not experience its blessings and may even face painful regrets failing to reach their goals. But again, when if you remember, we talked about that in Laylatul Qadr and the night of the value. We said that every moment can be that moment. Every moment can be an opportunity that individuals can have that transformation, have that value. So there's no time that um, the individuals cannot have that transformation. And this month is specific because of this collective effort, because of this significance, as we mentioned. So in God's presence, time, space are inseparable, and there's no distinction between past, present, and future, and nor between two different locations. So this understanding reflects the human action system where a space or time and with the particular virtue is not necessarily related to that two aspects. So from a place of worship into a mystical perspective, um, is it could be a transformation that can happen through that experiential understanding. So that becomes in a space where the divine love and awareness manifests, and that grants a unique experience in collective the spiritual quality. So the significance of this month lays on the fact that the collective effort and aim is toward this Kamal seeking and self annihilation efforts to leave the neediness and limitations of the self for the presence of God, and allowing that transformation to happen in such a way that would cause individuals to um, be have all their actions and all their um, consequence of their actions, thoughts, and that emissions that we were talking about be godly or divine. One of the essential tools for transformation during Ramadan is fasting. And in previous religions, fasting also was suggested. But there are aspects of it, there are different aspects of it. For example, fasting of the eyes, tongue, mind, and other faculties that are also invited. So mentioned, and that really encourages people to abandon their habits associated with each of these faculties. So similarly in Islam, fasting plays a significant role in breaking the habits. So from this perspective, fasting is a program designated to improve human perception and guide individuals toward detachments. And that could be detachments of anything. It can detachments from the food, from the time that we're eating, and the detachments to a certain type of food. So it removes the overall attachments, and along the side, the internal intellectual aspects of it helps individuals through the abandonment of the external habits, such as eating, drinking, which typically also have a fixed time, especially in a modern society. So this process really aims to optimize and recognize the internal software of human existence that can really get misaligned once the habitual pattern is developed. So humans are naturally inclined to develop habits, and the vast majority of people can be considered in some way addicted. And when we say addicted, not necessarily to substances, it could be in anything, someone addicted to reading books or exercising, or addicted to their pillow or a cup of tea or coffee or anything that lacking of it would cause an interruption and disturbance or tension for individuals. And the need for fasting uh, is basically adjusting their mental and behavioral framework. And from this approach, Ramadan can be seen as a period of detoxification and addiction recovery. So the harm caused by habitual behavior can be identified in two main areas. First, habitual engagement in event like um, virtuous acts. For example, things that anything, I just want to really emphasize the fact that there is no good habits. Anything that becomes repetitive in a way that the person gets attached to that repetition, it's negative and can have these long-term negative impacts. So over time, this attachment uh, basically causes attention and diverts the attention away from the divine. And that's one of the main points. And second, habituation or developing habitual pattern to anything disturbs the human internal software. And that's basically if you remember, Hamfazi Kalbodi, or the body Hamfazi Halgheh that we received in second course. That was uh, bringing all the various layers of existence together and Hamfaz them. So having that habitual pattern developed, it creates a defective informational cycle, a faulty loop that harms the individual in different ways and actually opens their existence to the attacks of negative intelligence network or non-organic viruses. So we also talked about, if you remember, we talked about the um, I don't know the English name of that character, but in Farsi we call it Zahak, and it's a character has two snakes or serpents coming out of his shoulder, and the serpent's gonna in this Dr. Taheri uses this character kind of as an analogy that the each of those snake serpents are mind and psyche, and if the habitual food for these serpents are not provided, they torment the individual basically. And fasting disturbs all such conditions, and it would basically prevent the continuation of the habits and breaking the defective informational cycle or faulty loops. So the existence of such a flawed cycle proves the detrimental to human well-being, and that is something that we can see even on the tension that creates for individuals once the habits are not met. So it's very, very important. So one of the important aspects that I mentioned is that once these faulty loops are faulty informational cycles are developed, it can cause the layers of existence to disintegrate and basically disturbs the Hamfazi of the bodies, and that generates obstacles, and these obstacles will create barriers against uh, these obstacles creates tension, and that tension can cause a negative potential energy. But essentially, this lack of Hamfazi of the various bodies, it creates a gap between the space in between these bodies that would be hospitable for non-organic viruses that can cause a lot of issues. We talk about them later. So we can look at it differently. Once the habitual patterns, if it's habitual, becomes addiction, the lack of providing those needs would cause tension for the individuals. That tension becomes like a form of negative potential energy, puts them in a negative state, so on and so forth. You know, that's the development of psychosomatic illnesses. But on the other hand, it disturbs the synchronicity or Hamfazi of the various layers of existence, which will also result in the penetration of negative infiltration of the non-organic viruses, which basically cause all sorts of other issues and illnesses, which we'll discuss them in depth later. So another benefits of fasting pertains to its social impacts, and that is when individual starts fasting. One of the suggestions, according to the religion's teachings, um, fasting is considered the, if you remember the word zakat of the body, and zakat is basically something that we should have give in return to existence as a result of something that we have. For example, if you have a healthy body, one of the things that we can give back to universe is basically fasting, and by that, basically, we are able to actually provide an opportunity in another level that can help have a positive impact on a society level, a social level. So zakat is a type of, you could call it transaction based on the principle that what is taken from existence must be returned to it. So a portion of what is taken from existence or something related to it, it must be returned and gifted back to existence. So zakat can relate to thought, wealth, speech, or anything else. We talked about it before. So for the body, it's fasting. So the opportunity that it gives to the body to kind of allocate the portion of the food that we consume over the year, which is equivalent to 30 meals essentially, to the ones in need. So this practice not only helps the unprivileged, but also breaks the dietary habits, the habitual patterns that we develop in terms of the time, and also helps with the health of the body. So there's a lot of goodness about fasting and Ramadan as we're kind of getting deep into the philosophy of its existence and why and the whyness of its significance. So fasting also can create an opportunity for individuals to shift their perspective. For someone, let's say, not considered a community for 11 months, fasting can become a chance to direct their focus toward who in need, which promotes a great sense of social connections and engagement. This approach really aligns with a lot of societal aspects of fasting and reminding individuals of their rights of the poor, and also uh, distributing the wealth in a little bit, or at least be a reminder for the rich. So historically, in ancient society, in village or small towns, all individuals lived closely and interact with one another, including the poor, hungry, and everyone else. And that kind of created a great sense of empathy. And so people would basically see each other. But in a modern life, that everyone's kind of disassociated with that, and everyone is very busy with their life, that's very disconnected. So this fasting helped create balance in such a different ways, like society, and that also helps with preventing envy and resentment from spreading, because this one month, once a year, uh, it's an opportunity to really engage those people and then make connections on a societal level. So throughout the entire year, this resentment and envy is less spread as a result of the hierarchy of the wealth distribution. So there's a lot of aspects that we discuss. So fasting provides undeniable value to a lot of aspects of um, society, and in terms of we could even look at it intellectually, we could look at it psychologically, we could look at it in any aspects of society. So these type of approaches really helpful for different aspects. Another note that it's important is that religion states that lying to God kind of nullifies fasting, and that is kind of like equivalent to invalidating the meaning of God, Allah. And if we acknowledge that every part of existence carries one of the names of Allah, it becomes really clear that disrespecting or disgracing the uh, sanctity of the divinity, the holiness of any component of existence, uh, that kind of uh, equals to lying to God. So if one's belief and vision are not aligned in this month, focusing solely on kind of refraining from eating and drinking, the course of their life will not really lead to desirable direction and its optimal level that is aimed in Ramadan. And the Ramadan would be just be another month. So really Erfan looks at the quality level of everything. If we really aim high, that Erfan comes and look at the quality that we're aiming high. So things becomes more intricate and more uh, sometimes difficult, because it looks at the improvement of the quality, and improvement of quality always comes with challenges. So that's extremely important to remember, that when we aim high, then we basically inviting challenges, and these challenges are basically necessary to indicate and give value of how determined we are, and um, how real we are in terms of wanting those goals and chasing those goals and aiming to achieve them, how serious we are. So another important topic related to Ramadan was Laylatul Qadr, which we discussed. So I'm not going to discuss with that, discuss that again. So just to recap, one of the most significant aspects of um, Erfan Halgheh is that it decodes a lot of philosophical, spiritual, scientific, and religious notions, because its job is to look at the quality level behind everything. And there are so many aspects in humans' existence, in history, in society, and religion is one of them. So Erfan is looking at the quality level of those notions, everything that it's suggested in religion's practices, part of their Sharia, why they were suggested. What is the quality behind it? If one is pursuing it, why are they pursuing it? What should they achieve pursuing those qualities? And what would be the quality consequences of if one would practice them or one would go after them? And are they just basically a mechanical type of ritual that someone wants to just do to satisfy God for the immunity of from the wrath of God, or is it something significant in their spiritual journey that could contribute to their Kamal journey and and their journey of a spiritual maturity and perfection? So if that's the case, then Erfan Halgheh's job is to look deeper in the quality assessments of all those notions and look into the depth of that and what it means and how we can elevate our um, spiritual journey and Kamal journey and our qualities toward an alignment with natural laws so that we can have a healthy society and then healthy individuals and also individuals that are aligned with the natural laws and fulfilling the divine mission of our existence. So that's about it for the material tonight. Thank you so much for being here and listening. If you don't have any questions or anything to share, we can do a few minutes at the sol, and then that's it for tonight. Any questions?
Hi, Priya.
Hello.
I remember a few sessions ago you mentioned another halga that's called like Hamfazi with time.
Yes.
How is that different from Hamfazi, like cosmic Hamfazi?
Right. Well, you could kind of, first of all, the Hamfazia, cosmic Hamfazi is related to specifically to all the aspects of existence, you know, the universe. And then I know that time is also included in that. But there are some halqas that are looking at specific aspects in a unique way, and that's time is one of them. So you're having Hamfazi with time in a specific way in that halqa, and we don't have the halqa yet. We will receive it later on in the courses. So so that's a difference. There are some specialized halqa. It's almost like, you know, we have Farlamani that helps us with dealing with a lot of illnesses and disorders, for example, even psychosomatic illnesses. But then we have a halqe, for example, dichotomy scanner, scanner which basically help us with kind of having a scan of the psychosomatic illnesses in a different way because it deals with the neutralizing the tension and the negative potential energy. So it's like everything that is in the universe has various aspects and angles we can approach it. And that's why it's not just like one specific halqa would be good for everything because there's so many various aspects of existence that requires a specialized treatment per se, for lack of a better word. So that's why. So we have they're completely different in a sense that one looks at the universe and all the components of it, connection between the parts and the whole in a very specific way because there's another halqa doing that in another angle. You can ask about that questions. Definitely you would ask that there as well. Like what is the difference between this halqa and cosmic Anfazi? The same answer would be there are every concept, every notion has various different angles we can approach it. And there are some more intricate, specialized approaches. There are more general approaches. And then so the more we go further, the more we get this specialized halqa that are working in isolated aspects of our existence for more specialized improvement on those areas, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So let's do an etisal and we will be back in a few minutes. And that's it for tonight. Thank you very much.